We're making homemade pasta using eggs from our very backyard, from our favorite little chicks that run around like they own the joint. And we're also gonna pair that with the most delicious green basil pesto with basil also from the backyard. Hi guys, I'm Laura Vitale. Today we're making homemade pasta with fresh pesto. This is a lovely, lovely meal for me to make. Not because it's elaborate, but because it's using a lot of things that are growing in the backyard. So as I mentioned, we have lots of chicks. They love to run around. They love to have a good time. They provide us with some beautiful eggs every day. We have one little teeny tiny rooster. His name is Bandit, and he really literally thinks he is the boss of everything and everyone. And we love him for it. We love how committed he is to his role. So this is a really exciting meal for me to share with you. I make this a lot throughout the summer because we've got so much basil growing in the garden, and I shared this with you last year when I was making it just on stories on Instagram, and it's been one of the most popular things that you've requested. So here we are. I'm doing this by hand. I'm making my pasta by hand, not the pesto. I will use a food processor for the pesto. I'm making the pasta by hand because to me, making homemade pasta is such a joy. And it's also, it's very, very therapeutic. It reminds me of my nonna. It's a good time. I always do this on a board because I feel like if you're doing it on a board, it kind of helps absorb things better. It just works better. You need some double O flour. You could use all-purpose flour. However, I find that when you use double O flour, you get much more of a silky texture. And you just need flour, eggs. I'm going to use 4 eggs. I've worked the recipe a little bit from my original one, and it's pretty phenomenal, if I do say so myself. Look at these beautiful eggs, right? Look at them. And you can't really beat the color, can you? Look at that beautiful one. Can't really beat it. I mean the color of the yolks, by the way. I didn't mean the color. Well, they are beautiful, but you know what I'm saying. To this, we're going to add a good pinch or 2 of salt. And then I just do a little bit of olive oil around the edges. It kind of helps make everything nice and elastic. And now you're just gonna slowly whisk the eggs. And as you're whisking, you do this very mamarela style, very nonna style. As you're whisking, you're gonna incorporate your flour. And if any of the eggs starts to run around, it's fine. It will be fine. You're going to gather it all up and it's going to be fantastic. And now you're just going to gather everything together and knead it until it gets nice and smooth. Do not get to this point and feel intimidated like you've done something wrong because the dough is really, really crumbly. This is why a lot of people make the dough in a food processor because it really helps pull it together fast. However, you just need to give the flour time to absorb all the liquid, and you see how the more we mix it, the more we knead it, the smoother it gets. So it just takes like a good, I would say a good 10 minutes, but it'll come together. You just have to have faith. You see how different it is just from a minute ago? You just really do need to give it time. The warmth of your hand really helps. After 10 minutes, you should have a really nice smooth dough. When you are working with pasta dough, you want to make sure that your mixture is not wet because you're not, looking to get a sticky dough or anything like that. But if it feels a little bit too dry and crumbly, you can always add an egg yolk or a little bit of water. An egg yolk or an extra egg would obviously make it richer, especially if you're using like homegrown eggs and things like that. They're not all going to be the same size, and you really want 4 nice, big, large eggs for this recipe. But always add an extra egg. It's a great thing about home cooking. Sometimes my nonna will make pasta dough, and the eggs will be this small, so she'll add like 8. Sometimes the eggs are about this big, and she'll add like 3. But it's the same amount of flour every time. That's a great thing about home cooking, right? I'm gonna let this rest for about a half an hour at room temperature. You want that to really relax before we start rolling it out. And in the meantime, I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna grab so much basil. I'm gonna grab my food processor and make my pesto. We have quite a few patches of basil. I'm probably just gonna take from this big patch today. I want about, let's say about 4 cups total. I may not use all the pesto today, but it's great to keep on hand You know, you put it on chicken, you can marinate, make salad dressing, slather it on some bread, all the things. We've got some beautiful tomatoes here. I don't know if you can see them. We've got some artichokes back here. They're not doing so great, but we try. Every year we always try something new. We always know we're gonna do herbs, lots of tomatoes, lots of eggplant and zucchini, because those seem to do really, really well every year. And then we sometimes just throw in a plant here and there of something new, see if it works. Look at that beautiful basil. Gorgeous. Oh, it smells insanely good. Got my basil all clean. I'm gonna add that to a food processor. The very small, tender stems are fine. You don't have to remove them. They're really tender and they're gonna blend into everything else, no worries. It's a very standard pesto. Listen, some things can be improved upon, but sometimes when you want basil pesto with fresh pasta, you just want fresh basil pesto. You know what I mean? I want a classic. I've got some pine nuts toasting here. Really important, and you give them a little toasty toast. They're not quite there yet, but they will be in just a minute. I've got my pasta water getting ready to come to a boil. To the pesto, we're going to add some garlic. I use 2 cloves. You're not cooking pesto, so you may want to start with 1 clove. A squeeze of lemon, and I know some people get mad at me for the squeeze of lemon. Listen, my aunt, my nonna always put a squeeze of lemon in there. It really just makes everything really bright and it helps with the green color. But if you don't like to put lemon in yours, guess what? Don't. Do the boss applesauce. I've got some parm. I always keep them in these containers because this is what I call my blender parm. I blend it all in a blender and it's so easy. I actually tend to keep some of it in a freezer. Healthy pinch of salt or 2. It wants to be salted. It wants to be flavored. These are good enough. Your pine nuts. And now, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to start pulsing, right? I'm gonna get it going until it starts to mix everything up and really start to break everything down. And then we're gonna slowly stream in the olive oil. Okay, get in here so you can see what it looks like. Because now, I'm just grabbing a spatula, because now when it's at this point, we're gonna start streaming in our olive oil. I use regular olive oil, not extra virgin, because I don't want it to be too strong in flavor. You'll need about a 1/2 cup for this amount, and do not be shy, because without olive oil, it's just not the same. Pesto's done, and the reason why it's got that sort of creamy look to it is just because I added a few more pine nuts than I should have, but that's because I really like it. They give you really great texture. They make everything really creamy. It's completely divine. So that is done. That I'm gonna lick as soon as you're not looking. I'm gonna clear, and then we're gonna start rolling our pasta. Just sprinkling a little bit of flour on my board. I'm probably just gonna end up rolling half of this today, keeping the other half in the fridge because I don't need it all today. Just make sure you keep it nice and wrapped up. I am using a pasta roller, like an automatic one, but you can also use a handheld one and it's fine. Or you can do this by hand with a rolling pin. It's just really difficult. It's not difficult, but it's just so time consuming if you do it by hand with a rolling pin, and I tend to just lose patience. So even my Nonna has a pasta machine these days just because sometimes your patience is worth it. Do you know what I mean? And I do it really simple. I start on the widest setting. This just attaches to my KitchenAid on low. I start on the widest setting and I do this twice. I do this setting twice, and then what I do is every time after that, I keep going tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, if that makes any sense. And I do like to very lightly, and I'm going to show you, I do like to very, very lightly just pass it through some flour, just so that nothing sticks, but not crazy, just nice and light. And now from this point forward, this is setting number 1. I'm just going to keep going until I get to setting number 8, because 8 is the smallest setting, if you haven't gathered. And you can also cut it to fit, so if it's getting a little bit too wide, just cut it in half and you're good to go. But you're just going to keep going. Last setting. You can see it really stretches. I ended up cutting it in half after I passed it through the third setting because it was getting longer and I couldn't reach. But you can just keep cutting it until you feel like you are at the place where you can easily manage and handle it. I'm gonna pass this through the fettuccine section over here. You can also just cut this by hand. It doesn't matter. I really like my machine. I just feel like it's so easy to use. Hold on. It's so easy to use. Makes my life a whole heck of a lot easier. And I like it. I just like it. Now at this point, if you were gonna store these in the fridge, okay, you would want to let them dry out a little bit. You can put them on a baking sheet with a little bit of semolina and let them dry out a bit. Because if you were to put the whole thing in the fridge, it'll just all stick together and turn to glue pretty much. But these are perfect. I'm gonna cut them in half just to make life a little easier. And then I'm just gonna set them here. I like to add, instead of flour, when I leave them to sit for a few minutes, I like to add semolina. Just a little semolina makes such a big difference. And I'm just gonna set them here. I don't have to cover them or anything until I am done with the second sheet because I'm only gonna do half. I'm gonna save that other half for tomorrow. So back to setting number 3, and I'm just gonna keep going. These are perfect and good to go. My water is up to a boil. Good amount of salt. Add them in. These are only gonna cook like a minute. Once they start floating to the top, they're done. They're very, very easy to cook, very easy to eat. I'm getting my tongs, getting my bowl ready. I've got my pesto ready. I have pretty much everything ready. I'm just gonna grab my parm because it disappeared. Where's my parm? I'm gonna grab my parm. Oh, it's right here actually. Maybe I don't need to go that far. Maybe I don't need to go that far. It would be great if I could do this in one take so that I can show you how quickly something like this comes together. But, I mean, it's just about ready. They are gorgeous. You can cut them to thinner ribbons if you want to. I really like this tagliatelle fettuccine cut, but that also has a thinner setting as well. The machine does, but if you cut them by hand, you can cut them to whatever size your heart desires. I put some of my pesto at the bottom because when you add the hot pasta, it kind of warms it up a little bit. And I like to add a few splashes of the cooking water. Oh yeah. You're just gonna mix it and mix it and mix it until your pasta starts to really absorb the pesto. Oh, and if you could smell this right now, my goodness. I remember, this is a funny story, but I want to tell you anyway because you're my friend. I remember when my aunt in Italy, I remember when so she's my dad's sister, so it's my Nonna's daughter. I remember when she got a bimbo. Do any of you remember a bimbo back in the day in Italy? I know they still have them, but when they first came out in the early 90s, it was like a big, big deal. And I remember when she got a bimbo, and then they started making everything in it. She used to be actually a bimbo salesperson, and she made pasta. And I remember that was the very, very first time that I can remember, and I have a really good memory. That was the first time I ever had fresh pesto. I remember it like it was yesterday. And like I said, I have a pretty good memory. Look at the strands of pasta. Look at those gorgeously coated. Look, the sauce is just clinging on and holding on. My mouth is watering, like literally salivating. So this has pesto has a lot of good memories for me. That pasta is just so tender. It melts in your mouth. It's tender, has some chew to it. It's not thick and gluey and hard at all. It's actually quite phenomenal. I can't even describe it to you. I will have the recipe written. Make it. It is home food at its finest, but so good. You will love it. The recipe is on laurainthekitchen.com. I hope you enjoy spending time with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.